Long days, pleasant nights, and welcome to Kingslingers, a Doof Media podcast journeying through Stephen King's Dark Tower series. I am your host, constant reader Scott Daly, chopping down ironwoods in the forest because I'm a lumberjack, and that's okay.
And I'm King Newbie Matt Freeman, and I sleep all night and work all day on this podcast.
This week on book number 8 of the Dark Tower series, The Wind Through the Keyhole continues as we begin the story within a story the story titled The Wind Through the Keyhole. We meet Tiny Tim, the son of a woodcutter who finds himself in the middle of a fairy tale world filled with evil stepfathers, magical tax collectors, and fairies, possibly, in this fairy tale. Matt, what did you think of this week's reading?
Oh, it's great. I just had to ask though, Scott, is it the story that is called The Wind Through the Keyhole, or the story within the story that is called The Wind Through the Keyhole?
Both.
That's my favorite
it's
part.
Always both.
That's my favorite part. I love this. I love the whole new kind of tone we're hitting here. This is actually quite distinct from anything in the Dark Tower, I would say, up till now. And it's very fun to see King sort of showing off that he has this kind of range, that he can really shift his voice over into something that feels quite different and tell a very different kind of story. And I'm just, really sort of, I don't know if I should say surprisingly into this, because it's Stephen King. He's really good at getting you into things, but it's like, we don't, there's none of our Dark Tower characters here. This is basically a completely new story. And I'm already into it.
It feels weird that we're on, part 2 of this novel, and yet this is basically a part 1 of 2 of a completely different story. You're totally right. But I think the most fun thing about it is that while we're in this whole new story, King has kind of laid this out for us and given us this clear nested story structure. And it allows us to, as we go through the story, really start to think about what is the significance of the story within a story? What is it saying about the layer above it? And what is it saying about the layer 2 layers above it? And that's the most fun I have in this story. I think this is a wonderful little fairy tale that we've read half of, but the most interesting parts of it are not the direct plot connotations of the fairy tale, but how those connotations relate back to the little boy that Roland is telling the story right now and to the family that older Roland is telling the story to as well.
Right. And reflecting, of course, back on Roland's tale, and his relationship with his mother as a child, because this is the story of fundamentally, you could say it's the story of a relationship between a mother and child. That is set front and center in our introduction as we're about to read. And it thematically is at the core of the story. It's
delightful. I really enjoyed it. And I really like this. This was a bit of a weird episode to prep for. This is one of the episodes I'm more nervous about talking about because I don't feel as well prepared, because I found myself summarizing more than analyzing in my notes. But I think it's just because I didn't want to fully write down all my feelings. I just wanted to kind of be more loose with it and talk through all the metaphorical implications with you as we go. So
sounds good.
We're gonna give it a shot, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, this feels very different from really any other week of talking about the Dark Tower, because it feels like we're talking about a totally different story, but of course we're not. There's going to be all these callbacks to the main story, but it's kind of untrodden ground for us. Something this sort of disconnected. Yeah,
I mean, we don't see the word Roland written in any of these passages, of course, but he's there. He's there. Yeah. How about we get into it?
Yeah.
Before we do that, we just have one very brief announcement. It is the second Wednesday of the month, which means another episode of our bonus Patreon podcast, Other Levels of the Tower, is now out. That is the bonus show where Matt and I go through Stephen King adaptations, one a month. And this month we talked about the Langoliers.
Oh, yes. It was a fun conversation. Sometimes, I try to avoid ragging on stuff because it's not positive energy. You're not putting positive vibes out into the world. But every once in a while, it can be fun to just uncork on a really, really shitty thing. And the Langoliers adaptation was not a good adaptation.
No, it was not at all, Matt. I think it was a fun conversation, as you said, though. And I think, we got down to really talking about what makes a good adaptation and why it is a thing that follows the book so closely actually not a great adaptation.
Yeah. It was fun.
Definitely fun. So if you want to listen to that, you can go to our Patreon account. That's patreon.com/doofmedia. Pledge at the $10 level above, and you get that episode, as well as I think we're up to 5 other episodes of Other Levels of the Tower where we've talked about Stephen King movies. Tons of fun those conversations are. It's kind of interesting having to navigate around the books you've not read that I know we're going to read later. Like, we can't do anything The Stand because we're reading The Stand. We can't do the Salem's Lot miniseries because it's just very interesting having to navigate around that. But it's been fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so let's move into The Wind Through the Keyhole. And by that, I mean the fairy tale within. You got it.
Uh-huh.
So as we said at the beginning, we're obviously nested pretty deep here, Matt. And technically what is happening now is old Roland is telling his Kata a story about a young Roland who is currently telling small Bill a fairy tale to help him sleep through the night. Just wanted to make sure before we go on that we're all on the same page about what is happening here.
Yep. And I'll remark, we do actually kind of lose the sense that Roland is telling the story here.
Yeah.
In the framing story for this, King was going out of his way to remind us that Roland is telling the tale. We were getting these little injections of, only later would I realize, and, commentary from Big R. But instead here, the tone of the storytelling changes quite a bit. It ceases to really feel like this is Roland telling a story. It's more like maybe you could say we're reading the original version of the story as it exists in some scroll in Midworld, I'm not saying that's what I think is happening necessarily, but like it really does feel quite different.
It does. I think it's fun though, because as we talked about, there's a lot of things you can infer here, because we have to remember that the framing device of the story is this is a story that Roland's mother told to him a lot when he was a child. This is one of his favorite stories of his mother's that she would tell to him over and over again when he was a kid. He really loved it. She would read this out of, I think the Tales of Eld, right? These classic tales. And so it's really interesting to frame what's happening in the story around that idea, not only around the idea that this is Roland telling it to a kid and then older Roland telling that story and how this all relates back and back and back, but also just this general idea of, this is the story Gabrielle Duchesne told her son. And how does that matter? Because there's a lot of information here about Gilead, about Eld, about the world and the people that live in this world. This is a frame of a very common, unprivileged family in this world, and how that relates back to Roland and his life. And really, because King chooses to not, as you said, to not ever really show that portion of the story. Like he could have interjections where like, and then my mother would make a stand up, or like she would do something to, like, he doesn't ever point back to the fact that it is Gabrielle that told the story originally to him, but it matters. It does.
Yeah, I mean, you could let's set aside what I just said about it feeling like maybe it was a scroll. Like maybe this is the way Gabrielle Duchesne would tell the story.
Or maybe it isn't, right? I mean, that's like, we can assume that this is the way she told the story, but it's Roland telling it now. So what is he changing from his mother's version of the story? What is he adding to it? What are we seeing that is something that he's layered on top of a story that his mother told him, knowing the fact that he is carrying this guilt over the death of his mother? It's fascinating, and it's not textual, but he's put all the pieces there.
Yeah, I can't wait to talk about that sort of thing as we go through this.
Definitely. But first, let's talk about the opening of this fairy tale. Once upon a by, long before your grandfather's grandfather was born, on the edge of an unexplored wilderness called the Endless Forest, there lived a boy named Tim with his mother, Nell, and his father, Big Ross. For a time, the three of them lived happily enough, although they owned little. I have only 4 things to pass on to you, Big Ross told his son, but 4 is enough. Can you say them to me, young boy? Tim had said them many but had never tired of it. Thy axe, thy lucky coin, thy plot, and thy place, which is as good as the place of any king or gunslinger in Midworld. He would then pause to add, my mama too. That makes 5. Big Ross would laugh and kiss the boy's brow as he lay in his bed, for this catechism usually came at the end of the day. Behind them, in the doorway, Nell waited to put her kiss on top of her husband's. Aye, Big Ross would say, we must never forget Mama, for without her, all's for naught. Such wonderful. And I think the thing I want to focus on first here is King's just effortlessness in which he transitions to an entirely new voice and cadence. I mean, like, it's different from us because we're divided by a week between our discussions, but really you like turn a page and it's in one tone, one cadence, and one voice, and then suddenly it's in this other one, and it's so like it feels like it's not a big deal. Like, yeah, I just did that. It's fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, you're totally right. It's amazingly, and you know, not only is it a different tone, but like it's a note perfect fairy tale start.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
like it's all kind of in the midworld register where he's using his telltale phrasings like many and many but somehow makes it feel like a fairy tale, like you're just, you know, you're just opening some book of you know, Brothers Grimm stories and you're seeing this and you'll be like, yeah, sure, I'd buy that. I think a big part of that is the names: Tim, Nell, Big Ross. We have Big Kells later. Like these are all just such like classic sounding fairy tale names. I think Nell in particular is one that I'm not sure why I say that other than the Diamond Age reference. Because I think that the reason why the character is called Nell in the Diamond Age is also because it feels kind of fairy tale-y. So there's probably some original reference that Nell is coming from that I'm just not aware of, actually.
I'm pretty sure there is. I'm not thinking of it right now, but I think you're totally right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're so right there. The names work. I love we can't just say once upon a time. It has to be once upon a by, because that just also, you know, takes the fairy tale and puts it in that midworld register. It's really wonderful.
Yeah.
And then of course we have our four things, right? We have this. The opening is doing a lot of very important things here. This establishment of thy axe, thy lucky coins, thy plot, and thy place is just this. It's really effective way of immediately anchoring you to the characters. Like, these are small people with small lives and small needs, but they're happy and they don't care. And over the course of a very, very quick time, all of these will be stripped from our characters. And so we quickly understand what's important to them, what matters, and then what's taken away.
Yeah, absolutely.
And of course, that there's that all important "my mama too" beat, right? And King has kind of primed us to be paying very close attention to any mother references throughout the story. Elder Roland is telling the story the days after confronting the truth about what he did to his mother, and younger Roland is telling it days after what he did to his mother. So we're kind of told that this and like we said, the story was told by Roland's mother. So we hear the word "mom" and our ears perk up. And so this line here at the beginning, "we must never forget mama," is just so charged.
Yeah, I think I probably should have been even more horrified at the statement, "without your mom, all's for nothing." It's pretty ironic, pretty great ironic setup for this story, you know, and these characters, given the choices that they're about to make. Yeah,
and you can maybe start to get an understanding of why Gabrielle told this story to her son. It's like a story about, hey, take care of your mama, kid.
It's the giving tree.
It is. You're right. You're so right.
I mean, I'm afraid it's going to be literally the giving tree. I don't quite know where the story is going, but I'm very worried. We'll see.
Yeah, we will see.
Hey, the giving tree is also about cutting down trees.
Oh yeah, it is. It is. There you go.
Time to use my textual parallelism prediction power and just predict the story on the basis that it's going to be like the giving tree.
Can you make it like the giving tree and like Lord of the Rings all at the same time?
Well, there's Ents. We didn't have any Ents in the original story, but now we basically have Fangorn Forest / Mirkwood, which is this nightmare forest full of monsters.
That is very true. So we learned the story of Tim begins properly when Tim is just 11 years old, which is, of course, the age of young Bill, as well as the age that Jake is currently. Also, just a friendly reminder to folks out there that while young Roland is probably 15-ish at the time of the story he is telling to Bill, Roland was 11 when he witnessed his mother dancing the Kamala at Sewing Night Cotillion, and also when he witnessed Hack's betrayal and saw him hung. So 11 is quite the year in the Dark Tower.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I saw a tweet this week that was along the lines that sixth grade, or, you know, that's roughly being 11 years old, is the worst year of everyone's life. And then all of the replies, including mine, was basically like, yep. So I do wonder if there's something universal about that, where it's this inflection, you know, on the way toward adulthood where everything just is, you know, terrible.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's what it is. If you look at if you look at the events that have happened to all these characters at about that age, it is this transformative moment where they undergo some great stress that kind of sends them barreling into adulthood. Roland witnessing, like, understanding what betrayal is and witnessing death, and then also like understanding something's going on with his mother that he doesn't fully comprehend yet. Jake dying, right? Jake died. Bill witnessing the death of his father and what that's going to do to him.
Yeah.
So in this particular story, Tim's father is horribly killed by a dragon while out in the spooky forest chopping wood. His partner Big Kells survives. And I have to ask here, Matt, were you suspicious of Big Kells immediately?
No, I was not. I was too slow on this. And I think I can sort of defend myself and tell you why that was. I thought this was like a fairy tale for children, like the sort of tale that it would be appropriate for Gabrielle Deschain to be telling her young son. And so I was I was not considering the idea that this would be a sordid tale of betrayal, onerous taxation, and spousal abuse, like some kind of Coen Brothers fairy tale. I thought it was going to be like a kid's fairy tale. And I don't, and then you say, Matt, why did you think there was going to be like a kid's fairy tale in a Stephen King book? And I'd just be like, I don't know, man. I wasn't thinking it through. So like, I didn't become suspicious of Kells until we're basically being led by the nose to wonder, like, oh, this guy sucks actually. What actually happened? And then I sort of belatedly became aware of what his actual relationship with Big Ross was. And then I was like, oh, okay, I get it now.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. I think one of the things that King does so well here is because he's kind of thrown you headfirst into a fairy tale with this fairy tale language, you're told a dragon killed him and you just kind of roll with it.
Right.
Because you're almost put in the position of Tim, where the world is this fantastical, scary place that you don't fully understand yet. And so if someone tells you a dragon burned a man alive in the spooky forest, you're just like, yeah, gotcha. Okay. I believe that.
Exactly. At that point, you're just like, oh, okay. Yeah, sure. I guess there were dragons in Midworld at this point. Yeah.
And what I love about it is we are so firmly in Tim's perspective that we learn later that like no one else actually believed this bullshit. Like everyone knew it was a lie. And Tim misses that completely because like he sees that people are like treating Kells differently and are like he's at a distance with him. No one's partnering up with him. They're all like trying to avoid him as wherever possible. And to Tim, he sees that, but he doesn't process it because he doesn't understand that the lie was a terrible one. It's like the perfect lie to trick a child, but nobody else.
Right. Like I think we're basically going to learn that it was probably a crime of passion that he then covered up very ineptly.
Yeah.
And it's even to the extent that maybe just they can't prove it, and so nobody wants to make a fuss, but everybody knows. Yeah. And so while Big Ross's death is a tragedy, of course, it also puts the family in a bit of a bind. They've lost the axe, the coin, and if they don't pay the Covenant man Gilead's taxes in a few weeks, they'll lose the plot and the place as well. We're going to talk about the Covenant man a lot today, Matt, who, as we'll basically be told almost directly, is Walter O'Dim, Randall Flagg, the Man in Black. We're going to be talking about him a lot later. But isn't it fascinating that like the man who drives the plot here is a representative of Gilead, a representative of Roland's great-great-great-grandfather who is collecting taxes in the name of Roland's line? Yeah. This very negative slant on Gilead is just absolutely fascinating, considering, this is like a popular bedtime story in Gilead being told by basically the Queen of Gilead to the princeling of Gilead. Like, I don't know what to make of it, actually. Like, it is very interesting, and I'm not sure if we're going to do anything with it story wise, or if it's just like King wanted to show that maybe Gilead wasn't all as good as as Roland thinks it is, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, we can definitely say that King's wanting to show that, but I think the most fascinating part to me is perhaps Roland is realizing that. I think, this is one of those areas that we can start to play really fast and loose with what's going on in the story. Like, is this the version of the story that Roland was originally told when he was a child, or has Roland put his greater understanding of the flaws of Gilead and the reasons why Farson was able to gain a hold on these people, and has he peppered that through the story on his own? Because like, as we saw last week in the first part of the Skin Man story, there were several parts. And as you picked up on, there's a lot going on with like showing the ways in which the line of Eld has started to fail, and the ways in which, Gilead's power and authority has weakened itself over time. And that strikes me as especially when we're in first person there, it strikes me as a person reckoning with the truth of his lineage and its failures. And you can kind of add that to this story as well.
Well, so yeah, you saying that really prompted me to consider, you might want to tell like a young knight the story of like a time when the kingdom was in disrepute, and the king was weak, and the knights were not doing their duty, and the people were rightly resentful of the weak king and the absent knights. And but young prince, we're not like that anymore. And your duty as a knight of Gilead, as a gunslinger, is to not let this sort of thing happen again. Like if the thing like this were to happen again, then the gunslinger should ride into town and set things right. And so it is a lesson about the potential failure modes of a sort of feudalistic civilization, but it's sort of for the purposes of moral teaching, it's communicating to the child listener, like, yeah, this is a potential failure mode that you should be aware of so that you can be better than this.
Yeah, I like that too. I mean, and we don't have a definitive answer on any of this stuff, but it's fun to speculate on that.
Exactly.
And I think that's a very valid read. And I enjoy that quite a bit because, it seems like that would be something you'd want to do. And I mean, the other read is that Gabrielle knows the flaws of this system. Like we don't know the full story of how Martin was able to get her under his sway, but perhaps she was not content with how things were run in Gilead. And this is a representative of that. This is a woman who recognized the flaws and was trying to teach her son, look at the flaws of the system. Look, this is it. Like, this is what we're doing to people. Maybe there's a better way.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, I think we don't really know Gabriella Deshane.
No.
And I think maybe stuff like this prompts us to wonder, who is she? What led her to become the wife of Stephen Deshane? What led her to be in this situation? And Roland doesn't really think of her as a human being. He thinks of her as his mom, which I think is a common thing for people to do. But this story is prompting us to wonder those things.
Yeah, and because of the way we're doing it in this kind of very non-textual, non-direct way, it does kind of match onto an adult, looking back at the memories of their mother and trying to construct who she might have been as a person without any direct evidence, without any direct interactions, just through pieces, through assumptions, through feelings. I think it's very effective in that, and I like it a lot.
Yeah, me too.
So when contemplating what their futures will be now, Tim's mom feels a gust of wind. And because we've already been told that wind has a very important as a symbol and an image in the story, we got to talk about this for a little bit. So here's what it says. At night, when the wind blew from the north, it stole to her bed through her open window like a lover, bringing its own special smell, one both bitter and sweet, like blood and strawberries. Sometimes when she slept, she dreamed of its deep tilts and secret corridors, and of sunshine so diffuse that it glowed like an old green brass. Like old green brass. I can't read today. But I mean, that's like this duality of the wind, right? We've already kind of been told that when Roland, when the wind is up, it makes other people feel uncomfortable. It makes Roland feel good. And so this duality, this smell that is both bitter and sweet. It is memories of his mother that are both sweet and comforting, but bitter and tinged with the guilt that he feels.
Yeah. And I'm just going to keep comparing Ka or connecting Ka with wind every time it comes up.
Sure.
Because I mean, yet again, this feels like Ka, like a wind, is blowing into her life and bringing this unwelcome dose of dramatic plot with it, because the day after she has this this sort of pseudo mystical interaction with the wind is when Big Kells comes by, and it's like, oh no, Ka is here. like we've gone from like it was sad that her husband died to like, okay, well here's the antagonist introducing himself, basically.
Yeah, the antagonist bringing the solution to all her problems in one foul swoop. Yeah, I love how even if you haven't like started to get to the point of like, oh, obviously Kells killed his partner and lied about it. Like, you're just made the writing really makes you feel uncomfortable about him. I love that King kind of takes an aside here and briefly tells us the history of the three of them, and they had this love triangle when they were children. He was in love with Nell, but she liked Big Ross better, and so she went with Big Ross, and he drank his sorrows away because he was so depressed about it. He eventually found someone and fell in love with someone that kind of righted him, but then she died, and of course, I can't remember. Did it say how she died? I can't remember. I think she just got sick.
Yeah,
so I want to be like, did you kill her, Big Kels?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're probably supposed to wonder on some level, like, is it normal for healthy younger women to die spontaneously, or maybe he was abusive to her, maybe she maybe she was even suicidal because of how terrible he was. We don't know. I think we're fully left to just conjecture and then probably come to the worst possible conclusion because he's such a piece of shit.
Sure. Yeah. So I think by this point you might starting to be like strongly suspecting Big Kels of something more sinister. And I think this is when it starts to get really interesting here, because not only are we playing on a lot of storytelling tropes right here. This is basically in a lot of ways Hamlet, right? It's not his uncle, but it's Hamlet.
Yeah. Might well be,
yeah. But it also is interesting in the ways that it parallels Roland's own story. His father did not die in Roland's life, but someone did come in and take his mother away. And I think it's really interesting that we kind of see the parallels there.
Yeah, that is really interesting. I wasn't really thinking along those specific lines beyond just like Tim is a young boy who is about the same age when something bad happened to him, and then too much pressure was placed on him, and he was sort of shaped by circumstance into needing to become, a man of action, into becoming a weapon at a very young age.
Sure.
It'd be interesting though, because I was not thinking about direct parallels to Roland. So if you have any that are jumping to mind, I would love to, hear about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll go through them as we get here. I think this is a very broad one. I'm not gonna say that there's this brilliant connection here. It's just literally like a usurper came in and took my mother, and yes, it was not there was not an affair here. His father is dead, but it is still very much is something that Roland would feel. And you wonder, we're not clear on how far back Martin's manipulation of Roland's mother was. So again, you have to wonder, was there some winking going on here? Was there some hey, pay attention, something's happening to me and I'm trying to explain it to you, my child, in the only way I know how. I don't know.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought. Like she's bewitched in some way, but she's trying to communicate nonetheless, perhaps.
So Nell, of course, agrees to marry Big Kels, despite both her and Tim's reticence. And I love this line here. And so they were wed. That is where many stories end. It's where this one, sad to say, really begins. It's just a really good touch.
Yeah, love it.
So we immediately see that Tim was right to be worried, as Big Kels is a drunken asshole that actually just beats his wife on their wedding night because he gets too much graff in this guy. And then we get to this part here. All in here now, all I have. Baldy knew I had to have silver before wide earth, didn't he? Old you-know-who is coming, and he'll have his hand out. He spat between his old scuffed boots. This is your ma's fault. Ma's fault? Why? Didn't you want to marry her? Watch your mouth, boy. Kels looked down, seemed surprised to see a fist where his hand had been, and opened his fingers. You're too young to understand. When you're older, you'll find out how woman can get the good of a man. Let's go back. So once again, echoing what we talked about last week, this long-standing trend and tradition of Gilead and of Midworld of blaming women for all your problems.
Yeah. I mean, this guy specifically sucks so bad. I don't think we've had the wife-beating piece of shit archetype in the Dark Tower yet.
Sure.
But he seems to fit really well because of the misogyny of kind of the Midworld culture. But he's like specifically infuriating because he's so incredibly, almost solipsistically selfish. I mean, I think we've all known a person like this at some point, just like a pure narcissist for whom it is never his fault. It's always someone else's fault. All of his problems are someone else's fault. Life is just a series of undeserved insults, and he's just totally blameless. Just for some reason, I don't know. Perhaps it's because it reminds me of people I've known who are like this, but I just can't wait for him to die horribly.
So one thing I want to broach with you here that I like, I'm not saying this is absolutely what's going on here, and this is definitively what they wanted to go on here, but there is this interesting idea of, we talked a lot about Roland Deschain and about his father Stephen last week, and about we saw this young version of his father, this young idealistic version who was able to inspire this man to become sheriff, and then we saw an example of this older, more frustrated, angry version of Stephen Deschain, who is kind of beaten back by life and is lashing out about it. And so there's an interesting parallel we could make here, where through the lens of Tim, we see one father die, the kind, loving father who was promising the world, and we see another father come, the angry, drunken, beats his wife, incredibly cruel to his wife and cruel to the world type of person. And I wonder if there's a connection there, not necessarily that Roland's father died and he got a new one, but a part of Stephen Deschain died, and we're left with this cold husk of a man that we saw.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I'm much more inclined to sort of leap on that as having something there, because we did get this snatch of the young Stephen Deschain, and Roland also expresses interest in it, and he's like, it was like, gold for me to find out the slightest shred of information about what my father used to be like. And it's sort of like he needs to know, like, that sort of, better man existed. That's really cool. Yeah, I'm enjoying that thought a lot.
Cool. We'll maybe pay attention to that and see if we can link anything up to that idea.
Cool.
So we know that Tim really loves going to school. That's one thing we do know about Tim. We meet this character called the Widow Smack. He loves going to her and learning his maths. And we also learn that his new father doesn't want any of that. He won't let him learn. And he also won't let him learn the tree cutting trade either. He says he's too small to do it. And one thing we see from Tim's mother is that that's the one thing in life he was super interested in doing, is kind of following in his father's footsteps, being a tree slinger, if it were.
Yeah.
Instead, he gets sent to the lumber mill to work on stacking lumber. And this paragraph is, I think, one of my favorites in the book, and I want to talk about it for a little bit. Okay. So next year, he'd still be at the sawmill. Only by then, he'd be big enough to carry boards as well as stack them, and there would be less time to do problems, because he'd have to work 5 days a week instead of 3, mayhap even 6. The year after that, he'd be planing as well as carrying, then using the swing saw like a man. In a few more years, he'd be a man, coming home too tired to think about reading the Widow Smack's books, even if she still wanted to lend them out, the orderly ways of the Mathematica fading in his mind. That grown Tim Ross might want no more than to fall into bed after meat and bread. He would begin to smoke pipe, and perhaps get a taste for graff or beer. He would watch his mother's smile grow pale. He would watch her eyes lose their sparkle. I love this so much.
Yeah, I agree. I love the crap out of this paragraph. Let's talk about it. I want to notice, the first thing I want to talk about is how much of it is images.
Sure.
So, like, in contrast, I kind of rewrote it this way. Soon he would be bigger and have less time to practice the mathematics he loved. He would grow into the kind of man that Big Kells was, focused on creature comforts, whiling away the days. His mother would gradually lose her joy in life. So, like, I wrote that not to be nauseatingly bad, but just to be like, just saying the same basic things in a very boring and straightforward way, which is like it probably immediately left your brain as soon as I said it. But like the images that King gives us in contrast, it shows you how strong these images are. Like, we've got this image of a man shoveling meat and bread into his mouth and then collapsing in bed.
Yeah.
We've got a flash of like a woman's face growing older, less joyful, growing pale, growing hollow. We've got these specific images of his labors becoming more intense and demanding, as he himself grows bigger. And we sort of see this little movie in our mind of Tim getting older, growing up, his joys dwindling away, and him basically kind of becoming a person like Kells is now, almost a rapid fire literal slideshow of visual images that the reader, consciously or not, is flipping through as they are processing the sequence of sentences here. Yeah,
you're totally right. And I think it is so much more in line with how a child would process this, right? He might not, he wouldn't say my joy would be dead.
Right.
He sees the future in those images, in the actions that he will do and the ways he will feel, and not in these specific ways of framing things to look wise about it. It's just a series of depressing images. I mean, this is relatable to anyone, I think, of this fear of complacency in old age, right? You're young, you're hopeful about your life, and there's this fear of, becoming not necessarily like your parents, but like a version of yourself that has no joy and has no dreams and has no real taste in life. And I think it's incredibly relatable to that. But the other thing that I thought about when reading this paragraph was the conversation we had about last week. We were talking about the sheriff looking at the world as it was now, and looking at the world as not a place of order and justice and righteousness, but a place where the world has moved on, of doom, and things are not going to get better. They're just going to get worse. And here's a kid who's grabbed onto that central idea at 11 years old. And it's a real bummer.
Man, I love the idea that you just touched upon, that like the world moving on could be seen as a metaphor for growing up, where like when you're young, the world is magical and full of limitless potential. And then, pressures are put upon you and the magic goes away, which is exactly what the world moving on is supposed to mean. The magic has gone away and is replaced with rationality. And you have to go get a job and everything is gray and dead. And there's robots, I guess.
Well, and I think more thematically to the Dark Tower, that the power of stories can wane a little bit if you let it. Like, when you're a child, stories are incredible because you're so wide-eyed and accepting of everything. And as you grow, as you get older, you get a little more cynical. You've read and seen a lot of stories, and their effect works on you less unless you really open yourself to them. So it's, I think, fitting to our theme of story, the power of storytelling as well.
Yeah, I agree.
And then suddenly, Matt, it's time for the Covenant man to come, and we get this important part. The villagers would grumble, but pay. And if they couldn't pay, their land would be taken in the name of Gilead. Perhaps even then, in those olden days, some were whispering it wasn't fair. The taxes were too much, that Arthur Eld was long dead, if he had ever existed at all, and that the Covenant had been paid 12 times over in blood as well as silver. Perhaps some of them were already waiting for a good man to appear and make them strong enough to say, no more, enough's enough, the world has moved on. Perhaps, but not that year, and not for many and many a to come. So we introduce the Covenant man, who is, as we said, the Man in Black, this tax man, as a bad guy, and the one thing we make sure to do is make sure that he's also a representative of Gilead. He is Gilead's representation in this far-flung corner of Midworld. And it's wild, right? Like, imagine like a young boy hearing the story for the first time and thinking, are we the baddies, mommy?
Yeah. Yeah. I know we'll get to it more, but like, I can sort of imagine this whole story ending with Eddie being like, so how is it that Walter O'Dem, the Man in Black, has been serving in Gilead for thousands of years under different guises as an obviously evil presence, even in your own culture's stories, and none of you notice this? Which I don't know if King's going to be quite that meta, but it would kind of tickle me if the Quartet members were like, "Hey, Roland, did you notice some things about your story?"
Sure, and we'll maybe kind of bridge that when we come to it specifically, but I want to introduce a theory here that again has no solid textual support, but I think there's so much open to interpretation in these sections. The idea that this man, who, as we read these interactions with him, is going to become increasingly more and more obvious that this is just Walter O'Dem. This man, maybe when his mother told him the story, it wasn't Walter O'Dem. Maybe Roland has internalized his hatred for Walter, that whenever he tells a story of a meddling wizard, he just inserts that character into the story.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, perhaps Roland is the kind of storyteller who never lets the truth get in the way of a good story. I mean, especially because this is basically a fairy tale. And he has, as we know, sort of idiosyncratic ideas about how storytelling should work. So yeah, maybe he's doing that. I don't know.
Yeah. And I mean, maybe he's not even like conscious and aware he's doing it. Maybe he's just like, he's telling the story and describing this person, and he's describing Walter without even being fully aware that he is. I don't know. It's the fun of this, right? It's really fun to just kind of speculate on these things and wonder.
Yeah.
We don't know for sure, but yeah, I enjoy it.
I mean, speaking of comparisons between characters, we compared sort of Tim to where Roland is, but Tim's story reminds me slightly of Walter's story, because we know that he was like like lowest of the low farm boy, right?
Sure.
And he he ended up leaving the farm, and I'm like, well, it would be really interesting if this story is, the story of like this young farm boy ultimately leaving the farm, because that would be, that it could even be, Walter literally like creating the situation where he's sort of creating another little Walter in the world.
Yeah, no, I like that.
It all depends on where the story goes. I don't really know.
Sure.
It's just kind of just a thought. Yeah.
Yeah. So as we were saying, the Covenant Man comes, and he's wearing a black cloak, a black hat. He has pale skin. And we also learn he hasn't aged a day in the 20 years that some of our characters have known him. So he's just totally not the Man in Black at all.
No. He's not a pseudo immortal like the Man in Black.
In the process of taking 9 knuckles of silver from Kells, the Man in Black, the Covenant Man grabs Tim and whispers to him, "How does thee like thy new steppa, young Tim? Speak the truth, but speak it low. This is our palaver, and they have no part in it." Tim didn't want to turn, didn't want the Covenant Man's pallid face any closer than he already was, but he had a secret that had been poisoning him, so he did turn, and in the tax man's ear he whispered, "When he's in drink, he beats my ma." Does he now? Well, does that surprise me? For did not his dad beat his own ma? And what we learn as children sets us habit, so it does. The use of palaver here, obviously in Midworld we use palaver a lot, but this is more gesturing towards the Man in Black a little bit here. Yeah. And that last line is the reason I pulled this, because it's absolutely a favorite. Yeah. What we learn as a child sets as a habit, so it does. Yeah. Could we be saying something about Roland Deschain with that line?
And and how generational trauma passes itself down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Literally, that's literally what this is. So
it is.
And I'm really interested to see where we go with the Tim character. Like, does he become a monster as a result of all of this?
Yes.
And I'm leaning toward he will, because it just feels like we're not going to have a happy ending, because none of Roland's stories ever have happy endings.
Well, the great thing about where I've expertly and intentionally left off the story is we're right on the cusp of the choice that Tim is going to make.
Decisions.
It's almost as if I did it on purpose, even though I didn't. I just picked a page.
Well,
so go me.
I guess King just paces his stories really well.
We've said this before, but yes, that seems to be it. Every time I randomly pick, it's a perfect spot, because that's just, he's a structure master, Matt.
Yeah. So it was funny because you just, when you did that reading just now, you basically did it in sort of the way that I think of Walter O'Dim as speaking. But the funny thing is, so Stephen King is the audiobook reader for this book.
Yeah, which is something we haven't talked about yet. I realized we didn't talk about that all last week.
Yeah, we didn't talk about that. And he does a I feel like it would be insulting to say a fine job, but he does a fine job. It's fun. It's nice to hear the story being read by the person who wrote it. You know that you're getting like the way he meant it, right?
Sure.
When it comes to the voice of the Covenant Man, he's kind of doing the Bat Dad voice, as someone on the subreddit pointed out. And it's a bit distracting, and it's nothing like the way I think of Walter O'Dim as speaking.
That's so interesting.
So that confuses me a little bit, but that's just I don't know if there's anything to be made from that or not.
That's so interesting, because I never would have thought that ever. Not only by the way I just always imagined the Man in Black talking, but just by the way this is written. It's written in like a delightful, like you're just enjoying this so much. He's just enjoying the suffering of these people so much.
Yeah, exactly. Just like you did it. Does he now? Oh, well, does that surprise me? Yeah,
does he now?
Does he now? Yeah.
That's so weird. Why would you do that?
Yeah, I mean, it's gotta hurt too. Well, I mean, it's because he basically says in the text, like, the Covenant Man's voice sounded like, I don't remember what he says. He says it sounds like gravelly and like death, which is, again, not how I remember people describing Walter's voice. Like, Walter's supposed to be, and okay, I guess we could have this conversation now, because like Walter O'Dim is described as being at least like somewhere between handsome and forgettable, right? Whereas this guy is described as looking like the Grim Reaper. So
basically, yeah.
So, I mean, it's entirely possible that Walter changes his appearance. We don't really know what he looks like. Maybe this is one guise that he wears, but it's also possible that this is just not Walter, and this this is just some other like time traveling warlock. And you know, if magic in this world sort of inevitably involves doors between worlds, then really any wizard is eventually going to find out about America, and so it's not that weird. It's just, it really does kind of seem like Walter because of his tendency to wink at you, to sort of do the anachronism plus gloating thing.
I really feel like King wants us to think this is Walter, and maybe this is exactly what we were talking about a little bit earlier, that this is Roland doing that. He's layering Walter O'Dim on top of the story, even though the words themselves don't seem to match what we understand of this guy. There's like this subtextual wink at you, like, don't you recognize Randall Flagg here? Even though it may not be. I like that.
Yeah, I like that too.
And that might be why he was so insistent on that bat voice.
Yeah, right.
So Walter maybe gives Tim a magic key that will open any lock once, and he hints that he should check out that chest in Kel's room that he's so protective of, and then tells Tim where he'll be camped out for the night and strides off. It's so fun because obviously Tim wants to solve this mystery as soon as he gets the key, and it's just so easily, like, you can see how the Covenant Man just like so easily manipulates his child, right? Like the same kind of manipulation. Again, if this is not Walter, he's doing the same kind of manipulation that Martin Broadcloak did to Roland Deschain to try to make him test the line before he was ready to, right? It's the same kind of manipulation here.
Yeah, and succeeded there as well, where he's just using his passions against him, even in a sense using his sort of better nature against him, but driving it in a direction that's going to make him act out of anger. It's such the idea of like the magic key that will only open one lock is such a great fairy tale concept to me. It's so great that you feel you must have read it somewhere before, but I can't think of any instance. So and we don't have a direct quote that links back to the title of our story, right? The Wind Through the Keyhole. We don't know what that means quite yet. But here is a keyhole, right? This is the first keyhole that's been introduced into the story. So we've been given a key, it's gone into a keyhole, and the wind has blown through this keyhole and kind of exploded all these people's lives. Because when he opens the trunk, Tim finds his father's coin, and this basically means that Big Kells was lying, because if his father was killed by a dragon, the dragon fire would have melted everything, including the coin that he kept around his neck. So Tim now knows this guy killed my dad. Yeah, I like that. It's basically Ka blowing through the keyhole.
Yeah.
Although I will say my prediction before, I mean, I guess I could still say it's a low-key prediction, is that like he uses up the magical key that can open any lock, and then at some point later in the story encounters some door where it's like, oh, through this door is the key to your mother's blindness or whatever. And he can't get through it because he already used up the key. But it's like, well, I could see that happening, but I don't feel like that's the sort of direction we're going.
I mean, that feels like a very Walter move, but yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
So distraught by this news, Tim grabs one of his proudest mules and most skilled mules, which I think is just a fun callback to Little Bill's pride at his own mule, like that whole conversation.
Solid as a dromedary.
Yeah. And he heads into the forest to meet with the Covenant Man and get some answers. I love this moment is filled with like the fear and danger of wandering through this forest at night. Like he's on one of the most well-trodden paths in the forest, but it's been established over and over again that this place is super dangerous. The reason why ironwood is so valuable and expensive and sought after is because only a select group of people are desperate enough or brave enough, whichever you want to call it, to venture into the dangerous forest and chop it down. And so we've long established the danger of this place, and Tim is there at nighttime, which most people would never dare go. Like they would not even, they're scared to go during the day, let alone night. And so it really defines Tim as this person who has a bravery and steel, under him.
Yeah.
Maybe he's a little bit of a gunslinger, this Tim.
Yeah, sure. I mean, if this were not the Dark Tower, then this beat would fit very comfortably into like the hero's journey. Like we have our hero who has been called to adventure, and he's going off into the deep dark wood, to face his destiny. But like, I don't think this is a hero's journey. I think Tim is being lured into a trap. This is one of those bad fairy tales about not listening to evil sounding monster men. But yeah, I mean, it's I don't know. I guess that's the thing. Like depending on how you're reading this, you can either read this moment as like a great moment for this character, or like, God damn it.
Sure. Yeah. And I think the ambiguity works, I think.
Yeah.
So Tim is heading into the forest, and he's afraid. So he says he's going to count down from 100. And once he gets to 0, he's going to turn around. Of course, as soon as he hits 19, he sees the Covenant Man's fire. And this is really interesting, right? Because, I mean, I like, on the one hand, we can just say this is King having some fun, right? Like 19 is an important number. We've talked about the loops, right? We've talked about the theory that the 19 is significant because that's the number of loops. But this is like an ancient story in ancient Gilead, and we're once again messing with 19.
Yeah. I mean, this is one instance where I can imagine that Roland is like literally just inserting that in the middle of his story and like perhaps even winking at Jake as he says this.
Yeah.
Because everyone knows it doesn't really matter what number it was. Like that's the least important thing in the world. So. Yeah.
So Tim gets to the Covenant Man's fire, and their interaction, I think, is just delightful here. I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but I love Walter O'Dim. I love the way he talks. I love the way, unless it's in Batman voice, of course, but I love the way he talks. I love the way he manipulates people, the pleasure and the joy he takes in this. I like in this scene here, he kind of sets off by establishing himself as this font of knowledge by both the world and the forest, because he knows Tim is here for information. So he's going to like establish himself. So like the first thing he says is like, I see you admiring my basin. It's a relic of Garland that was. In Garland, there really were dragons and bonfires of them. And then he tells them that a group of dragons is called a bonfire. And it's like, so he's having fun. He's having fun.
Yeah. Many Bumblers is a throcket.
Yeah.
He's
Throcket of Thraken.
Yeah. Throcket of Thraken. Yeah. He is doing like this is his joy in life, is like, taking someone in, sort of seducing them, and then pointing them at a target after he's convinced them that they should listen to him. And he's dancing. This is his joy.
Yeah.
Still could be some other evil wizard planeswalker, but
sure.
This feels like Walter though.
Yeah. I want to say that the other thing we know and have been told is that like, and we'll get into this when we read a book called The Eyes of the Dragon, but Garland is a place, is a kingdom that has come up in the story before and has a bigger role to play in that story, in which there is a character named Flag as well. So maybe another hint that this is just the Covenant Man is just Walter.
Yeah, that's probably fair. And I do recognize the name Garland, so that's a good point. Yeah.
So the Covenant Man commands Tim to go fill his shiny silver basin at the river. Tim walks over there and sees the water there is disgusting. It's filled with these bug creatures that are devouring each other. And I love this line here. Tim watched the bugs eating each other, revolted but fascinated. Would they go on until only one, the strongest, was left? It's some great wording there, right?
Is that what Roland is? Is he the last bug? Is he the last rat in the pail? Is that like, it's awful, right? Because if you take it in that direction, it's like he's not the last surviving gunslinger because he's good. He's the last surviving gunslinger because he was the most ruthless.
Sure.
And in a sense selfish. And so, that's why the tower has so much work to do to get him shaped up into a worthy descendant of Eld.
Yeah. And I mean, it's also just like, it's like textually, it's just, here's a boy who's learning how the world works and is for the first time realizing that the world is so much more cruel than he thought it was. Like it's enough to see the uncaring cruelty of the world that will just take your father away for you for no reason. And then to learn that this is not random happenstance, an act of God or a wild animal that was defending its nest. This was the cruelty of your father's best friend. And it's just like, I think he latches on to this because he's processing that cruelty. And I mean, to link it back to everything that's been going on, the same can be said of little Bill, who is dealing with the death of his father at the hands of the skin man, who we don't know who he is yet or why he's doing this, but it's just this immense cruelty. It can go back to Roland himself dealing with who he is. And yeah, like maybe Roland is pointing this out in this version of the tale specifically because he is thinking himself as the last of the bugs that's been fighting this civil war amongst bugs for all eternity.
Yeah, love it. Definitely. Yeah.
So the Covenant Man pulls out his magic wand, which is a steel rod, a gear shift from a Dodge Dart. So this is definitely not Walter at all. Definitely not. No. So Walter waves the wand over the water, and in it, Tim sees Big Kells beat the ever-living shit out of his wife and Tim's mother for basically finding the trunk unlocked and the coin going missing. It's so amazing here, right? Because this is working on a lot of different levels. Walter gives Tim a key to open any lock once. So he opens the trunk, but then the key breaks and doesn't work anymore. And so he can't lock it up again. And so Big Kells is going to notice immediately that the trunk is unlocked. And so Tim did something at the behest and manipulation of a wizard, and his mother is punished for it. It is his mother's fault. This is kind of taking a lot of the stories around Roland and the concept we've been exploring so far and rolling it all up into one.
Yeah. And I think on the sort of the fairy tale level or the theme level, he trades one thing on his list of 5 important heirlooms for another. Like he gets the coin back, but then his mother loses her sight. Like I mean, I cannot but wonder if like as he goes through his journey, he's going to recollect all of the items that his dad promised him. And like as he does, his mother is going to get like in worse and worse shape until he loses her when he gets the last piece. Like wouldn't that be the way that you would do this as a classic fairy tale?
Yeah, I like that because I mean he's about to get another one of his heirlooms, right? He's about to get the axe. Yeah,
and surely that's going to cost him something else because he's taking another risk. But it's it's not going to cost him. It's going to cost his mother, right? Or it's going to cost him his mother. Basically, is what I'm afraid of.
Well, we'll see.
Yeah.
So as soon as he sees this image, he runs to go help his mom, but the Covenant Man cruelly refuses to let him and says, furthermore, it's already happened anyway, which is right. Thanks, guy. Yeah. He then is nice enough to briefly show that the Widow Smack does arrive at his house, does come to tend to her. So at least she has someone tending after her. When asked if he sent her, he's like, no, I don't care about that kind of shit. So I like the book is putting in work to make us not trust this guy, and yet Tim is going to fully trust him with everything he's doing.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. You have to remember he's 11, right? Like we see what's happening here.
Yep.
Poor Tim does not, and probably won't.
And it's unfortunate the only person trying to warn him against this is a woman, and we all know about women in this world and how
can't listen to them. They don't know anything. Yep.
Yeah. Especially ones that are widowed or living on their own or with other women or stuff like that. Yeah.
Oh God. Yeah. She's like a witch or something probably. Yeah.
So the man in black the Covenant Man, wants to show him one more thing. And of course, that thing is the corpse of his father sitting in the water nearby. And I just want to read this description because I think it's really beautiful writing. There were no bugs in the water here. The Covenant Man was right about that. The stream was as clear as the water that flowed from the spring near their cottage. Lying 6 or 8 inches below the surface was a human body. The clothes were only rags that floated in the current. The eyelids were gone, and so was most of the hair. The face and arms, once deeply tanned, were now as pale as alabaster. But otherwise, the body of Big Jack Ross was perfectly preserved. If not for the emptiness in those lidless, lashless eyes, Tim could have believed his father might rise, dripping, and fold him into an embrace. The pokey made its hungry sloop. It's so good.
Yeah, the idea of a corpse that's been like very well preserved, except that the eyelids are gone, is very specific and creepy and weird.
It is. I mean, you can't he can't close his eyes anymore. Mm-hmm. I mean, you like in a symbolic level, his as in the moments of his death, he realized something about his friend, and then his eyelids are eaten as he sits in the bottom of the lake, like frozen in time, kind of like you can't look away. You can't escape it, you know?
Yeah. Also, I love the Pookie, and I love the word Pookie as being a word that refers to a giant murder python.
Yeah, they don't even ever directly say it's a giant murder python. They just say the Pookie and then like talk about a long snake-like thing. And you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's got to be a giant snake, but yeah.
I mean, this also, once again, kind of to draw connections between stories, this relates back to the moments in where we looked at the bodies of the people horribly ravaged by the Skin Man. I mean, the one real connecting thing is here that like this is an it, right? It's not a like we don't say his clothes were only rags, his eyelids were gone, and so his face and arms, once deeply tan, were paled. It's the clothes, the eyelids, the face. Like this has stopped being a person now. And that kind of relates back to when we were describing what happened to the people that were ravaged by the Skin Man.
I like that.
So the Covenant Man kind of explains here and tells the story of how he came to find old Big Ross here. I began to hear stories in Tavares, 40 wheels east of here. A woodsman who'd been cooked by a dragon. It was on everyone's lips. A bitch dragon as big as a house, they said. I knew it was bullshit. I believe there might still be a tiger somewhere in the forest. At that, the Covenant Man's lips twitched in a rictus of a grin. There and gone, almost too quickly to see. But a dragon? Never. There hasn't been one this close to civilization for years, 10 times 10, and never one as big as a house. My curiosity was aroused, not because Big Ross is a taxpayer, or was, although that's what I've told the toothless multitude, or any member of it trick enough and brave enough to ask. No. It was curiosity for its own sake, because wanting to know secrets has always been my besetting vice. Someday 'twill be the death of me, I have no doubt. Oh, Stephen.
Yeah, I love our awful Man in Black.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to point out how fun it is that the Man in Black is a tax man. Just seems so fitting. Nothing is certain except death and taxes, and so
it's great.
So of course it's him.
Mm-hmm. I mean, like the writing here is so good, right? Like. I love how his lips twitched in a rictus of a grin. That's so wonderful. And we have no idea what that means, right? Like
why? Yeah.
Why? But
what does he know? Yeah.
The story takes time to point it out to us. So you're immediately like, okay. And I mean, I will say the one thing we do know is that part of Roland's evidence for the fact that there really was a Skin Man here is that when the people saw a tiger, not knowing it was a tiger, described what the thing looked like. And Roland said that description matched perfectly the description of a tiger in the story, The Wind Through the Keyhole. So we do know that a tiger should be appearing in the story at some point. But we haven't seen it yet. So why the grin, though? We don't know. Yeah,
I mean, for a second, I was like, is he grinning about the fact that he knows that Roland is telling this story and that there's a tiger in the framing story? But I was like, no, I don't think that's it. But
that would be so fun though. Like in the middle of the story, he just says, "Hey, Roland."
Yeah.
And Roland's like, "Wait, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Did I said that? What?
Yeah.
Hold on."
Yeah. No, just all these little Easter eggs put in there. 3 stories nested deep. Wouldn't put it past the Man in Black.
Nope, not at all. So we see exactly what the Man in Black is doing here, though, right? He's up to his old tricks again. He's winding up Tim, making him furious, and then giving him the tools to seek the revenge he wants. You have his coin, now you have his axe as well. Where will you put it, I wonder, if Ka offers you the chance? In his head, the emotion, pure rage, had broken free of his heart like a bird with its wings on fire. Back or front, either will do me fine. This is kind of fun to talk about, right? We know that the text is certain and clear that the Man in Black, the Covenant Man, is winding up Tim for some reason.
Yeah.
But we don't know why. He's pushing towards some sort of outcome he wants, but we don't know what that outcome is or why, or how does it benefit him in any way. We don't know any of that. So it's just kind of like, why are you doing this, dude?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I just assume that he's a guy who likes to wind people up and then watch them destroy themselves and everyone around them.
Sure. But I mean, there's a specific like he's being sent into the forest, right? Like we'll get there in a minute, but he's being sent into the forest to look for something that will help him. So like, if he's just winding these people up and watching them eat themselves, like the bugs, like why is that so important to the whole thing? We don't know.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there definitely seems to be a plot afoot beyond just like he wouldn't be a very effective tax collector if his MO was just like destroy every town that he comes across in a, Leland Gaunt-esque fashion. So it's probably not just that. He probably has some ulterior, some specific motive, let's say.
Yeah. I mean, he might not. I'm not saying definitively he does. It's just interesting to think about that. All we know is that he's very clearly manipulating this child for his own ends.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see.
The last thing he does say is he wants the boy to watch out for the green sai. I don't know how to pronounce this word.
So this is a fun conversation because I think that once again, King is taking a word from our world and then mid-worldifying it.
Sure.
So what's funny is the word is sighe, which is very, very similar to the word sidhe, which is Irish, Gaelic, and is pronounced she, because everything in Gaelic doesn't really follow the normal phoneme structure.
Sure.
So King, I believe, I didn't go back and listen, but I believe he says it's something like sieg, not like she, but it sort of has the same general shape of the sound. But what's funny is like sidhe and sighe, that's almost the same word, except the G is like literally inverted. Like it.
Yeah, that's true.
I just thought that was funny where he's just literally physically twisted the word. And of course, a she in America, or I just called the world America in the real world is like a fae. It's like a fairy creature. Yeah.
And we learn out from the widow here that is exactly what it is in this world as well. Some sort of fairy creature.
Yeah.
Which makes this fairy tale literally a fairy tale.
Yeah.
So Tim returns home to find it exactly the way he saw in the basin. Kells has attacked and horribly mutilated his mother, and he's left her blind. And it's interesting here that like everyone says they're swelling to the brain. When it goes down, her sight may return. May, Tim said bleakly. There will be water if God wills it, Timothy. Our water is poisoned now, Tim thought, and it was none of any God's doing. And I love this so much, and I want to talk to you about this for a while, because we've seen Roland repeat the phrase, there'll be water if God wills it, over and over again. We know this is a common midworld phrase, and especially I think King has had him use it in this book over and over again, and had characters react to it in different ways. And I love that here our protagonist of the story within a story within a story is just kind of completely done with that idea. It shows that to a person like Tim, the idea of prayer or Ka or God are meaningless. He seems to believe that there's nothing that can be done here to do anything unless he does it himself. And I think that's the perfect tool for Walter, because we'll see here that like he hands him the key, metaphorically, to solve this problem himself, and so of course he's going to do it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I like particularly what you said about his agency is what makes him a good tool for Walter. Like if he were willing to just sort of let justice seek its course, let God provide, then Walter wouldn't be able to use him as a tool. I think, Tim thinks the water is poisoned because Big Kel's poisoned it. He thinks, Big Kel's murdered his father and blinded his mother and totally deserves to die. And I don't think he's wrong, but I think that the real poison is the poison of revenge that's going to drive Tim into doing something even worse.
Yeah.
It's funny because I sort of have a very concrete idea of where I think this story is going, and it's going to be really funny if I'm just totally wrong.
I mean, that's half the fun of it, right?
It's true. Yeah, no, I just, it's a very interesting idea. This idea that like, this is a reason not to pursue vigilante justice, is that it makes it easy for the universe to turn you into a tool of evil, you could say.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and to once again draw our lines back to our other stories, this is what Roland has done, right? So much of this idea of betrayal, of revenge, of anger and rage is wrapped around Roland and what his childhood was. From the very beginning, like he was manipulated into seeking and into doing something stupid to seek revenge, and everything else that happened from then on was kind of a consequence of that act to test the line early, and then that got him sent to Magus, and then that got the ball in within his reach, and that ended up with his mother being dead. It is the commonality of these themes is everywhere here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love it.
So Tim tells the widow what happened to him in the woods. He is completely honest with her, tells her everything the Covenant man said and all that stuff. And she smartly sets him straight. She basically says, hey, the tax man, he's a bad guy and he's an evil magic user, and you shouldn't listen to him or let him use any of his magics on you, and never go near him again. She describes him here as pestilence with a heartbeat, which is just absolutely perfect. And so, like, if we have any doubt about the nefarious intentions of this guy, the widow smack makes it very clear here.
Yeah. Got to listen to the wise math teacher.
Indeed.
But I don't think he's gonna.
No. So we also, in this moment here, we hear about Merlin for the first time in a very, very long time. And I only bring this up here because it'll come back up when Tim looks into the pail in a few minutes. Mm-hmm. So all we know of Merlin in the course of the story is that the evil glass balls were named for him. They're Merlin's glass, right? The widow says that some people think that the Covenant man is Merlin, but she doesn't think so, because she says he's nothing but black magic, and Merlin is of the white, so can't be. And it's interesting here, just that we've kind of introduced this legendary wizard of King Arthur into the story many and many ago, but he's really kind of coming to the forefront for the first time here, and the first time we get really a hint that he tangibly exists, and I think the hint we're told is that some say he lives in a cabin in the middle of this forest, and then immediately after being told that story, what does Tim see in the pail but Merlin living in a cabin in the middle of the forest? Yeah,
I mean, I feel like it's misdirection. Like I think we'll talk about it in a minute when he actually looks at the at the water, but. So I don't have any particularly new thoughts here on the Merlin mystery, because I don't feel like this is true. Like, I don't feel like this is actually going to be Merlin. I don't feel like we're going to meet Merlin in this story. So I just think this is a trick.
Okay.
Or like a red herring, I should say.
Okay.
I mean, I did want to just kind of say, for the sake of saying it, like the legendary Merlin was supposed to live his life in reverse, which sounds vaguely like Roland's Purgatory. Not very much though, but it does feel very Dark Tower. Like, it feels like a very Dark Tower idea.
Yeah.
So that's kind of neat. It does make me wonder if that idea doesn't fit in somewhere with the conception of Merlin in Dark Tower. I don't know. I don't have anything smart to add here. If there's a clue here, then I'm totally missing it.
Okay, cool. So Tim then meets up with the other loggers and tells them all what his stepfather has done. And this, we see in this moment, just confirms everything they thought about him. And all the adults pledge to help out. And this is really interesting because this is a very small, like tight-knit community. And so basically we see all the women come together to take care of Tim and his mother, to kind of nurse her back to health the best they can. And all the men basically say, we're going to go out, we're going to find this guy, and we're going to bring him to justice. And so it's like we've got it, Tim. Nothing to worry about anymore. We've got it. Mm-hmm. You don't have to stress. But of course you will.
Yeah. I mean, for me, this manages to be simultaneously heartwarming and foreboding because the community does come together to help, but they're also sanctioning Tim's desire for revenge and just making him feel more justified in it.
Sure. So. But we get this moment here, and I think this is really important because Tim then goes, before we get to the pail, he goes and beholds the face of his father, which of course we know, seeing the face of your father, remembering the face of your father is a very important thing. So for one last time, Tim gets to go see where his father is like being held up and prepared for burial, and he sees the face of his father. And I love this right here. Tim set out along Tree Road with the sun declining red on his right side. He felt hollow, scooped out, and perhaps it was better so, at least for the time being. With his mother blind and no man in the house to bring a living, what future was there for him? Big Ross's fellow woodcutters would help as much as they could, and for as long as they could. But they had their own burdens. His dad has always called his home place a freehold, but Tim now saw that no cottage, farm, or bit of land in Tree Village was truly free. Not when the Covenant man would come again next year, and all the years after that with his scroll of names. Suddenly Tim hated far-off Gilead, which for him had always seemed, when he thought of it at all, which was seldom, a place of wonders and dreams. If there were no Gilead, there would be no taxes. Then they would be truly free. So there's a lot to talk about here, right? I mean, I think this kind of links together with everything we just said, where like all the adults in the village are like telling Tim, don't worry about it. We got it. We're going to nurse your mother back to health. We're going to bring this man to justice. We got it. But Tim has done a little bit of growing up. And as he's after beholding the faith of his father, he's sitting there thinking, and he realizes that, oh, wait, this didn't solve any problem, actually. It solved the immediate problem. But the ongoing problem is we're screwed now. We're screwed. And this is, I think, what motivates his desire to set out on this quest of his. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's a very adult thought,
sure.
Though still, I think, misguided to imagine like, man, if only I didn't have to pay taxes, then I'd be like magically, metaphysically free. And it's like, no, you wouldn't be. Like there's, people spend their whole lives meditating to try to be free, and they never get there. So being free is a pretty difficult thing to obtain, but it's the sort of thing that is hard to imagine a child wanting and very easy to imagine an adult wanting, and that's why I think it's an adult thought.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I think that the interesting thing about the dynamics of the Midworldian economy, if we want to go here, is that it seems like, when it comes to this community, Tim has in the past done work and helped out and been paid in food. Like that's one thing we see over and over again, that he's kind of paid in food. But when it comes to like the money, right? It's like money in this world has very little use except when it comes to repayment of the covenant, right? Mm-hmm. And so it does bring this it is basically imposing a monetary system on a barter and trade economy. And these people are struggling with it. But I mean, the most interesting part of it, of course, is that this is, again, very anti-Gilead information and emotion and feeling in a classic fairy tale of Midworld and Gilead. Yeah,
that's true. That's great. I don't know. I love this. I love this idea. I love this bit here.
Yeah, I really do too. So distraught and uncertain about what to do next, Tim heads back home and finds Walter's magic wand just, sticking in the ground, waiting for him. Just not suspicious at all.
Uh-huh.
And despite the widow's very clear warning, Tim uses the wand and a bucket of his own to see more images. He sees that sheath.
Sheath.
She sees the fairy.
Sheev.
He sees
Sheev Palpatine.
A fairy. and he sees the Covenant Man, and they're repeating to him or signing to him, he must make haste, he must make haste. And then he is granted an image of a house in the middle of a forest. In that house is Merlin himself, who we see gives Tim a blindfold. And then we see a third and final image. When the mist cleared, he saw Water Tim standing at Water Nell's bedside. The blindfold was over his mother's eyes. Water Tim removed it, and an expression of unbelieving joy lit Water Nell's face. She clasped him to her, laughing. Water Tim was laughing too. And with that, Tim grabs his mule and heads into the forest. And our week's reading comes to a very sudden but appropriate end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, this all feels like a trap. Man in Black shows him one vision, which comes true, and then lures him into the dangerous forest on the basis of a second vision. Yeah. Which has no guarantee of being true.
Going into a dangerous magical forest to seek a token from a wizard that might or might not be there, to cure his mother's blindness, which will, of course, solve all their problems.
Yep.
It's, yeah.
I'm worried.
I love, like, it's such a picturesque scene, right? Like, Water Tim is sitting at Water Nell's bedside, and she's unbelieving joy lit her face, and they're laughing together, and they're so happy. And look at this. All you have to do, Tim, is go into the Death Forest and look for Merlin, who may or may not be corrupted by those very evil glass balls we know that are super, super evil.
Yeah. Right.
That led to Roland shooting his mother.
Yeah.
No worries.
No. Yeah. Don't worry. Then there's a tiger in the forest somewhere too, by the way. So there's
there's probably a tiger in there somewhere. Yeah.
Probably a tiger. And also, one thing which is sort of a symbol throughout this whole reading is the ironwood itself.
Sure.
Where, like, everybody uses the ironwood for everything. And it has this weird smell that's always described as like having a bitterness to it, but having an appeal to it as well. Which I don't know if I've ever actually smelled ironwood. Like, I don't know if I've ever actually interacted with a piece of ironwood in real life.
Wait. Ironwood is real?
Yeah, ironwood is a real kind of tree.
There's a wood called ironwood?
There is, yeah. It's a kind of hardwood, and it's valuable. It's very hard, and that's why it's called ironwood.
Wow. I didn't know that. I just thought it was word for, fantasy tree. I mean, I didn't think it was actually, let me say, before people jump down my throat, I didn't think it was actually wood that had iron in it. I know it just means iron as in strong, right? But I just didn't know it was a real name for a tree.
Well, hardwoods are like ridiculously strong. That's one kind of funny thing about like the modern world we live in, is that we don't really think of wood as being like all that strong. Because
we have steel.
Because we have steel, and thus we don't need hardwood anymore. But like, hardwood is absurdly strong material. It's I just looked it up out of curiosity, and hardwood is actually denser than water.
Wow.
Which is really unusual for wood. Or ironwood is rather, and I don't know. There's a bunch of other hardwoods that are really, I did a deep dive into hardwoods at one point because I was like fascinated by the concept of them. Because like, isn't it neat to imagine that to know for a fact that there are these woods that are really comparable in strength to something like steel. It's just we don't use them because we have steel now.
Wood facts.
Yeah, wood facts. This has been Wood Facts corner of Kingslingers. but the point is, like, it's cool. It's a cool symbol throughout the story where the ironwood is clearly like, it's what provides them sustenance, but it also demands its price. You have to go into the deadly forest to get it. Yeah. And people die, and trees fall on people, almost in a sort of Fangorn forest like fashion where the trees hate them. I mean, seriously, like, it kind of seems like the forest hates them, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're specifically told like they fear that the trees have souls and talk. Like, it is very Fangorn Forest-esque. Yeah. So we didn't talk about that at any specific point, but I just love that element and that feeling to the story. Yeah, definitely. Me too. It's so fun, and I think we get to go into the forest next week, and we're gonna see how all that turns out. I think you're right to pick up on the ominousness of this whole thing. It's very obvious that he's being manipulated here, and the question is whether this is one of those fairy tales that has a good ending or a bad ending.
We'll see.
We will find out next week as we will conclude the Wind Through the Keyhole, not the book, not the section of the Stephen.
We're going to continue the Wind Through the Keyhole, and then we're going to conclude Wind Through the Keyhole, and then we're going to continue on with the Wind Through the Keyhole.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
Before we're done for the week, we have to talk about last week's discussion question. For a reminder for those folks out there, last week's question was, now that we've met all three members of Roland's quartet, which was your favorite? And how does Jamie Redhand relate to Roland's future tet? How does he link up in the ways that both Cuthbert and Elaine have in the past?
Yeah, cool. So Nick Grew says, while I wouldn't go so far as to call them twinners, if I had to pick a twin for Jamie, it would be Jake. Both come across as having a more quiet and reserved baseline, and both have the initials JC. They're Jesus Christ figures who returned from the dead.
Exactly. Wait, Jamie does?
Well, we'll see. When looking at Susanna, you could probably make the connection that whereas both carried guns, each was very proficient with other projectile weapons, Susanna with the rises and Jamie with the ba. Both Susanna and Jamie also had fathers in the medical field. Jamie's father was a physician, so each was called away from one path and onto the path of the gunslinger. Their personalities, however, seem to be very different, so I'm sticking with Jake. I like that.
I like that too. Too. Otherworlds 1999 says, from Roland's original quartet, I would have to say I like Cuthbert the best. Yeah, because that's the right answer. Probably because he reminds me so much of Eddie. I love the Rook Skull and how he saves Shimi, but also how he doesn't give Roland a pass on his stupid behavior. As for how Jamie relates to older Roland, I think he most reminds me of Susanna. He seems to be someone with a thoughtful gift of sight, similar to Susanna. Yeah, I like that. He does solve the mysteries in a way that Susanna kind of just can see around corners,
mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah, I like that as well. I mean, I think even from these first two answers, you can kind of see that he doesn't really seem to map too cleanly onto any one person, but he does have traits that different members of the quartet do have. So, yeah.
Yes.
All 40001 says, for favorite original quartet member, there's no other choice than Cuthbert. Fight me, they say.
I will.
Jamie DeCurry's closest twinner in the new quartet is probably Susanna. His dad was a doctor, hers a dentist. He's got a large red birthmark on his skin, and she is, well, black. He prefers the bow and ba over the gun. She prefers the Ariza. There's much more about him in the comics. Interesting. Speaking of which, have you guys considered covering them on the show? Does Matt even know they exist? Yeah, I've heard of them. I think we've thought about covering them.
Yeah.
I don't know where we're standing right now, actually.
We've got questions about the comics in the past, and we've just had to cut them for time because the shows were running too long. I've never read them either, so if we were going to cover them, I'd probably want me to read them first, and then to keep true with our whole format. I kind of want to keep the main show like stuff that Stephen King wrote, right? Like that's kind of just what I want to do. Like
right.
We're reading Stephen King's writing. We're talking about Stephen King's work. I think it would be fun to do like a bonus episode covering the comics. That's not part of our main series. And I'll never say no to that. So I've never read them though. I think we talked about on last month's book club how incredibly expensive they are.
Yeah. Comic books and graphic novels are usurious, absolutely usurious.
Yes. Lastly, we didn't get too many answers this week, Matt. I think because people don't like poor Jamie.
Oh.
Last week we got Pear Jane, who says, I like Jamie a lot. Well, there, I'm contradicted immediately. He would have grown up to be Sam Elliott, squinting and raising an eyebrow silently in the corner, but my heart still belongs to Bert. He's charming and funny and doesn't let Roland be too Rolandy. I think if Jamie relates to anyone, it's John Cullum. Goes along with a shrug and a nod, offers intelligible commentary only when he knows it's worth his time, and is fundamentally a simple guy. Yeah, that's wonderful. I actually never thought about that. I think I went too hard with the direct Tet references and didn't open myself up to other things. I think that's 100% true. What we've seen of Jamie so far, he seems very John Cullum-esque. Yeah.
It's unfortunate that I kind of already see Eldred Jonas as a sort of shriveled up Sam Elliott.
I can't remember who is going to play Jonas in the sadly never released Dark Tower pilot, but
Probably
No,
Sam
it's
Elliott.
not. It's not. So yeah, that was all the answers for the question we got this week. Not too many, but that's okay because it means we're finally going to have an episode under 2 hours. And I'm so excited about that fact. But thank you to you folks who send in a question or an answer to the question. Hopefully we'll get a little more answers on this question. I think this is a fun one. We'll see. We've seen a lot of versions of the Man in Black in the story so far, Matt, right? We've seen Walter O'Dim. We've seen Martin Broadcloak. We've seen the Man in Black, who is Walter O'Dim, but
we've seen Randall Flagg.
And now we've seen the Covenant Man. And I want to know, what's your favorite version of the Man in Black in the story? Don't go to other books. Don't spoil other books for us quite yet. But the versions of the Man in Black we see in the story are many. And I want to know which is your favorite. And I want to know why. So please do that. And you know what? The cool thing is now, Matt, they don't got to worry about spoiling us. You can talk about any Man in Black in this story because we've seen them all.
Awesome. I'm so excited.
So remember to send those questions in via email at kingslingerspod@gmail.com, on Twitter, or to our Doof Media subreddit. But that is it for us here on Kingslingers. Next week, we'll complete the Wind Through the Keyhole. I already made that joke. I'm not making it again. You know what I mean. We're done. And if you are not already subscribed to Kingslingers, we strongly recommend you do so and never miss an episode. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube, Google Play, and pretty much anywhere else in the world you can listen to podcasts. Although I have to change this part of the script now, Matt, because Apple Podcasts is going to change it from subscribe to follow, because 50% of non-podcast listeners thought subscribe meant give money to, which, to be fair, it does. So follow us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube, Google Play, and pretty much anywhere else you can listen to podcasts.
Yeah, wow, what a weird choice that they made all those years ago.
Yeah.
If you like any of our shows on the Doof Network and you want to support them, then please consider donating to our Patreon account at patreon.com/doofmedia. Remember, we are continuing on with this show. So, if you've been a patron and you've been supporting us, we're going to keep doing Kingslingers for other King stuff. Like it's, we're going to keep making this stuff. So please keep riding along with us. And this week, we'd like to welcome new patron, new Doof Trooper, Orta T. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. And we hope you appreciate the bonus stuff, particularly the other levels of the tower where we talk about Stephen King adaptations.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good point, though, Matt. When we finished The Dark Tower, the book, The Dark Tower, a lot of the comments and emails we got was, I can't believe it's over. And folks, it's not over. It's not over.
No.
The funny thing is, like, we didn't want to commit to a season 2 when we were like halfway through, because we didn't know if by the end of this whole thing we were going to be sick of talking about Stephen King. But I think I can safely say now that we're not going to be sick of talking about Stephen King.
Right.
So we're going on. We got season 2 coming. We're going to keep doing our levels of the tower. We've got other things planned. We're sticking with King for a while. So we do a lot of stuff here at the Doof Media, but Kingslingers is not going anywhere.
Yeah, we may have reached the tower once, but we were just reset right back at the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, actually, that's surprise. Season 2 is actually just reading the books all over again.
Oh, God.
Of course, there's folks out there that cannot afford to donate, and as always, that is absolutely okay. We totally understand. There are still tons of ways to help us out that cost you no monies. You can, trade some ironwood for a subscription, or you can just leave us a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts. This week's spotlight review comes from Blaz, who gives us 5 stars and says, just found and is my new addiction. I stumbled on this podcast after running out of content due to COVID-related listening. I had previously read the Dark Tower series, but reading it with Scott and Matt presents an entirely different reading. I can't help but feel part of a larger quartet while listening, especially with the world feeling less connected. This feels like friends gathering around a campfire during the entirely too long night of 2020. Love it.
Well, thank you so much, Blaz. That makes me incredibly happy, because that's what I hope that this is for people. That's what we're trying to do. That's exactly what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
That's like the perfect description of what I want this to be. So thank you so much for telling us that.
Absolutely. And as hopefully we're seeing the light of the tunnel at the end of this pandemic nightmare, there's still great stories out there, and there's still a quartet here to gather around a campfire and talk about them. Maybe we just can be a little bit closer around the campfire in a few months, not 6 feet apart from each other around the campfire.
Yep.
All right, folks, thanks again for listening, and we will see you right back here next week as we complete the fairy tale within the story, long days and pleasant nights.
And may you have twice the number.